Well, welcome everyone to part two of our three-part Basics of Shelter Case Management training series. Today's session is going to focus on case notes and case planning. Today's training is really intended to be a little more hands-on, and we will be able to have some time to practice some of the skills that we're sharing. So if you like trainings that are a little more interactive and skills-based, then hopefully you will find this one valuable. We'll just take a moment and introduce ourselves. I am Mel Davis Campbell. I am a shelter program administrator on our shelter systems operations team here at Host. If you're not familiar with Host, we are the Department of Housing Stability within the city and county of Denver. I primarily support our family shelters, and I worked in family shelter for about 7 years before joining Host just under 2 years ago. Rosie?
Hi, I'm Rosie McQuiggan. I'm the Family Program Officer on the Homelessness Resolution Program team. So I oversee the contract side of things for family shelters and family rapid rehousing programs. I have also worked in shelters starting back in 2010. I've worked in almost every shelter in Denver, so a lot of experience there. Patrick.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Casey. I'm also with Host, Shelter Program Administrator on the same team as Mel. And I primarily work with a lot of our larger non-congregate shelters in the city and additionally do some support with our emergency shelter planning during the winter months. So happy to be here with you all, and yeah, appreciate everybody taking some time out of their day to partake in the training with us.
So to begin with, we have a little icebreaker here. We're trying to get into the Halloween, the fall spirit. So please take a moment to behold these stunning jack-o'-lantern artworks. And please type in the chat the number associated with the pumpkin that best describes your feelings about case notes and case planning. We've got a 5 from Jenny. That's awesome. 6, a 2. People are coming in all across the board. I see number 1 so far. That's awesome. I think I would interpret this as people have a lot of different feelings and levels of experience and comfortability about case notes and case planning. And that's fantastic. Hopefully you can take something away from this training today. So let's get into it. Thinking back to our case management roadmap that we shared in training 1, we are going to be focusing here on the roadmap. So the case planning and goal setting piece today. And if you attended part 1 of our training, you are well acquainted with Homer. He is our fictional client that we're going to be working with throughout this training series. And if you didn't attend part 1, or if you need a little refresher, here it is. I will give you his backstory again. And if you're not familiar with Homer's story at this point, please take some notes as I read you this backstory on Homer, since we'll be referencing him throughout today's training. So Homer is a 26-year-old white male. He grew up in a low-income family in a rural part of Colorado. His parents divorced when he was 7, and he experienced abuse at the hands of his mom's various boyfriends until he was old enough to move away from home. After graduating high school, he eventually moved to Denver because he heard that there were job opportunities in the area. Since moving here, he has struggled to find employment that earns him a living wage. He's tried his hand at a few different industries, but he's never quite managed to make ends meet. Homer also experienced a brief lapse in employment after he was hit by a car while riding his bike. Due to these challenges, Homer was evicted in 2022, and he's been staying in shelter since then while trying to get back on his feet. So we introduce Homer into these training series to try to make these skills and concepts a little more applicable to our real life work. So moving into the first portion of today's training, we will be focusing on writing SMART goals. If you haven't written a SMART goal before, it's just a way of building out a goal to make it more meaningful, more developed, more useful for clients and for yourself as a case manager. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So what do we mean by specific? A specific goal will specify the details of the goal. So what needs to be done, who's going to do it, and any other specifics related to that goal. The measurable part of a SMART goal covers how the action will be measured or quantified. How many of something are you trying to produce or achieve? How are you going to document it, track it, and to whom are we accountable? In terms of the attainable aspect, we're just wanting to make sure the goal is achievable. So making sure that you have the time and the resources to achieve that goal. We also want to ensure that our goals are relevant. So does this goal fit in with our larger case plan? Is this goal in alignment with what the client wants? And you might sometimes want to include a rationale or a reasoning behind the goal. And then, of course, time bound. We need to assign ourselves a due date to hold ourselves accountable. So we will take a moment here and actually practice writing a SMART goal. And here's the statement that we will be turning into a SMART goal. Homer will apply to housing. Yes, this is a goal. It's a fine goal, but it's not specific, it's not measurable, etc. I'm actually going to share a template on the screen. And if you're interested in using this template, I'll also put the link in the chat. And we'll also take a moment and talk about how to use this template. Give my internet a moment to look alive over here. We're firing on all cylinders, clearly. All right, I'm just going to put this link here in the chat in case this is helpful for anyone. And if you click into this Google Doc and you are interested in actually utilizing this template, you will just need to go to File, Download, and then you can save this as a Word doc so that you're able to edit it and work on it. So the way that I would go about using this template or actually writing a SMART goal is first you want to focus on this kind of chart down here at the bottom and just take a moment to kind of reflect on how each of these prompts might apply to the goal or the task at hand. And you'll probably write more in the notes section in response to the prompts than what actually ends up making it into your SMART goal. But the idea is just to really kind of get your juices flowing. And these questions are just helpful to reflect and make sure you're really covering all aspects of the SMART goal. Then once you've completed the chart section, you'll write a final actual SMART goal in the SMART goal section of the template, and this will be your actual goal. So we'll just take 2 minutes and practice turning the phrase Homer will apply to housing into a SMART goal. And then we'll come back together and share out what we have come up with. All right. Hopefully, everyone had a chance to at least get started on writing their SMART goals. Um, would anyone be willing to come off mute or type in the chat what you came up with as either your final SMART goal or even a way to make this goal more specific, more measurable, attainable? Anyone come up with anything that they feel compelled to share? Angelica, go for it. Thank you.
So I put for a measurable um is collecting documentation. So that would be socials, IDs, birth certificates, income. So that would be something measurable that I could assist with.
Sure, yeah. That's one way to know to track progress and know that you're working toward that goal. That's great. Thank you. And then Desiree is working off of their phone, so good for you, Desiree. Um, yeah, both case manager and Homer will look into housing options. That's great. That's a specific actionable step measured by the housing options he's applied to and the follow-ups he's made. Yes, thank you guys so much for sharing those examples and starting to kind of try to illustrate what we're talking about. So here is a SMART goal that I made up to try to illustrate these concepts. And that is the following. Homer will complete 3 paper applications to villas at Landmark, The Terrace, Haven Crossing, and case manager Mel will ensure application fees are covered and paper applications are dropped off no later than November 1st, 2024. So this goal is specific because it calls out specifically that we're going to be doing paper applications and it names the specific properties we're going to apply to. It also assigns some tasks to the case manager and just builds out more details around the goal because just the concept of Homer will apply to housing is very vague and needs a lot more specific actual information. It's measurable in that we've decided we're going to do 3 applications. So that's a number, a goal that we can work towards that is measurable. And yeah. And then in terms of attainable, we know that we have enough time to complete the applications by the due date. And we have the funding to cover the application fees. So yes, that box is checked. We know that this is an achievable goal. We also know that this is relevant because it fits within Homer's goal of obtaining housing. And then it's time bound. We gave ourselves a due date. Any questions on writing SMART goals before we move on to case planning? And I will share this example in the chat. All right, I will turn it over to Patrick for our case planning section.
Yes, thanks, Mel. All right. So with kind of some of those SMART goals in mind, we'll work through some sample case plans. And I think at the outset, I'll say that a lot of what we have in here are guidelines. These aren't hard and fast rules, but are kind of the basis of a good starting point that kind of will help frame some of our conversation. So some of the good, characteristics of a good case plan is structured activities and goals during a client's shelter stay. Those goals and activities, and it should include goals and any activities assigned to work towards those goals. Additionally, we want to make sure that we are including housing focused goals and other applicable goals that our client has shared with us, such as employment, health outcomes, and then potentially social supports, and then et cetera. There could be a number of other goals that we want to include in there. Also, we want to make sure that we are reviewing each of these at each of our case management sessions, and that we are updating these regularly as needed. Case plans also might include a needs assessment, strengths and barriers, and oftentimes I think your agency will have a template of a case plan that you can work with. And next slide, please. All right, so taking our example of Homer, I will go through a couple basic guidelines around case plans. So oftentimes we'll start off with a client profile. So we have our client Homer. So we'll have his name, we'll have his age. Additionally, we'll want to provide some current situational stuff that might be going on with Homer. So we know that Homer is experiencing homelessness, and we also know that Homer is staying in a temporary shelter. And then some history about kind of some stuff that has gone on with Homer is helpful as well to kind of frame some of our thinking around services that might be helpful. So we know that Homer's had a recent job loss. We know that Homer is experiencing some anxiety and health issues. And then we also know that Homer has had a lack of stable income. So that's kind of an outline of a basic client profile that we could put together in a case plan. And next slide, thank you. All right, so kind of after a client profile, we'll have our initial assessment. And again, just an outline. I think these can be structured in a number of different ways, but some of the stuff that we have in here, I think are foundational aspects of what an initial assessment should look like. So we want to make sure that we're listing Homer's strengths. So that could be previous employment experience that could help navigate getting Homer a more stable job or employment opportunities. Homer has also indicated that he has family in the area that might act as a support system. So that's definitely something that is a big strength of Homer's. Some of the barriers that Homer has listed: limited financial resources, health concerns, and lack of stable housing. And then also oftentimes it's helpful to list some immediate needs. So Homer may come into shelter and really not have a lot of things that are needed. So maybe hygiene items are something that Homer would list on coming into shelter that is something that's an immediate need that we can try to make sure that we're providing Homer right away once he starts working with us. Next, we have our goals section. So I think one thing that I'll note is that the timeline for goals, I think, can look a lot of different ways. And that is something that you can work through with your clients on whatever specific needs have been outlined. So again, this is just a sample, but for Homer, we've broken it up into two different time frames for goals. So we have short-term goals, which we've identified as wanting to try to have some movement on within 1 to 3 months. And again, these are securing stable temporary housing, attaining health care services. And additionally, Homer has also indicated that he would like to begin to create a budget plan. So again, kind of working out of making our goals specific back to some of the SMART goal practices We want to make sure that we're outlining timeframes and describing things in a specific way. Additionally, some of the long-term goals that Homer has indicated that between us and Homer, we've decided we think we can achieve within the next 3 to 12 months, or at least have a good amount of progress on, is find stable employment, secure permanent housing, and then also Homer has indicated a desire to start a savings account to put some money away for the future. And next, we have some specific action steps that we'll take with Homer's case plan. So again, with some of his short-term goals, he's outlined secure temporary housing. So researching available transitional housing programs is one thing that he has indicated he would like to do. And then also has talked about some possible family that is in the area that he could stay with. Attaining healthcare services. This would be applying for health insurance through Medicaid. We want to make sure that we're providing a date to get that application in. And then creating a budget plan. We want to make sure that we have an outline and have a date in place on that. And then the long-term goals, very similar. I think we've kind of talked about these, but we want to make sure that they're specific, that we're having a date. So for stable employment, we want to make sure that we're updating Homer's resume, applying to a specific number of jobs that are outlined, and then again by a specific date. And next slide, please. All right, so in the case plan, it's important to list some resources and support that Homer might be working with within the community that are in addition to the resources that he's receiving through case management with our organization. So we want to list any local shelter resources that Homer may be working with. There's likely to be some community health partners because he has listed some goals around his health. So we want to make sure that we're listing those partners that Homer's working with also. And then any employment related resources. And this is something that helps us stay organized. It helps us track resources that Homer is engaging with, and having all of this documented will help us collaborate better with other providers that are in the city that might also be working with Homer on some of his goals. So really important to make sure that we've got all of the resources and support that Homer is engaging with locally. And next slide, please. So documentation is another really important piece of our case plans. And I think we've talked about all of the stuff that's listed on this slide, but really want to make sure that we are documenting these plans, that we are writing things specific down that have been achieved or that we're working on, even stuff that maybe we haven't seen linear progress in, but we want to kind of redefine in conjunction with Homer and talking about ways that we can do that. So we just want to make sure that we're documenting stuff within HMIS or whatever case management platform that you all are using. And then a couple final thoughts on case plans. We want to make sure that we're outlining a follow-up schedule with Homer. So we want to, work with him and through that kind of define something that is something that's going to work for all parties involved. So for Homer, this will look like weekly check-ins every Friday at noon. That's something that works with Homer's work schedule and is also something that his case management team is able to do as well. So making sure that we have a specific time during the week to connect. And then we want to do a monthly review of goals and make adjustments as needed. So again, we want this to be something that is a living document, which is kind of what part of the next section is. So we want to review and adjust. At each check-in, we want to evaluate Homer's case plan and things that aren't being met. We want to discuss what the barriers to those items are and then adjust those action steps accordingly. And again, we want the case plan to be a living plan. As case managers, we don't want to drill down on stuff that maybe isn't working, but really try to be creative and understand that some of Homer's barriers could call for a little bit more creativity and then the need to adjust some of those goals and potentially timelines as well. And then I think lastly, and this is something that we talk a lot about, and I know your agencies talk a lot about, and when we're in, when folks are new to case management, it's something that probably is discussed pretty early on and in quite a bit of detail, but want to make sure that with all of Homer's information that we're keeping that confidential and secure in compliance with whatever our organizational policies are. So I will pause before I turn it over. Are there any questions that folks have about case plans? And I will also mention that I believe we'll have time set aside at the end for questions. So if you want to ruminate on anything, we'll definitely have a little bit of time at the end.
All right, thank you, Patrick. I will take it away from here. So I'm going to jump into case notes. So just to start with, I'm going to ask folks to either drop something in the chat or come off mute or raise your hand and just share with the group why you think case notes are so important to case management. And I will give us time for that. Anyone? All right, well, I'm glad. Oh, I see some now. Okay. Let's see, Desiree says, case notes are important to communicate to all members, to the team, and track progress as well as quantify. Yes, definitely. And then Kimberly says, creates a story for others to see. So definitely important for collaboration and communication, especially in our field where people change roles really quickly or leave. Helps communicate progress to different caseworkers and agencies. Yes, for continuity of care or case coordination, very important. Record keeping, definitely. Track progress, what has been done, a background story. Yes, all of these things are awesome. So keep dropping them in there. Past information, wonderful. I am one of those people who, if it is not written down, I will not remember. So I imagine a lot of folks are also like that. So let's see what we said was the reason that case notes are important. It is because they provide more in-depth details from a case management meeting. And in our fast-paced work, it's really hard to remember specifics, especially if you have a large caseload, which I know some of you do. So you can write things down and remember all those little pieces about each client. Important for documentation and record keeping. It's our detailed record of all the interactions we have, observations, actions regarding a specific case. It gives us a nice running record of client contact and progress. Their basic information, goals, action plans. We can put their SMART goals in there, look at measurements, see how they're really doing in terms of progress. Legal and ethical considerations. And so there's accountability that is built into that. It also protects you from any he said, she said situations. If it's written down, you know what really happened and you can clear things up a lot easier. There may also be times when folks like judges, lawyers, government agencies request those case notes. And so having everything written down, very detailed, is very important. As you all mentioned, continuity of care. So we can communicate to the next folks who might be working with them, especially if you're on a big team and they may be passed around to different case managers. Having someone able to look back at what's been happening, what's been worked on is really important. Or if you need to do a warm handoff to another agency. Or if your supervisor needs to see what you've been working on. Always want them to be able to see all of the work you do so you can get credit for all that hard work you're doing. And they also help with you identifying patterns in behavior, so you can look back and see like, oh, Homer has been late to every single case management meeting. Maybe we can talk about this and kind of figure out what's been going on there. It's really important to be able to look back and kind of assess things holistically if you have all of that information. Also, making some informed decisions about your next steps and interventions is really helpful to have all this written down. Planning future actions and goals. And lastly, one thing that I think you all are probably familiar with, and it's a phrase that's said in this field all of the time, is if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So back to the he said, she said, if something happens with a client, you need to make sure it's written down, because we can't just go on word alone, because there will always be three sides to a story. But if it's written down, then we have some documentation of it. So generally in this field, there are two different types of ways that we have notes. There's one of them. Does anyone know what the other one is? So we have DAP notes. You're good, Mel. I'm all over the place though. And it's fine if you don't. You'll have a couple minutes while I explain DAP notes. But if you can guess what the next one is, you get a star for the day. So DAP note is a very common way of tracking case notes. So the D is for data, the purpose or reason for the meeting, just general observations such as client presentation. So the client was really agitated today, they were angry, tired, things like that. The next is assessment. So how the client is progressing, status of goals set, client's response to goals and or progress. And then the last is plan. So it says follow-up items for you or the client, to-dos, referrals provided, information about the next meeting. So those ones are pretty tangible. And we're going to show you a template for this DAF note that you all can use moving forward if you like. So just like with the SMART goal template, you can download this one and save it for your files for future use if you would like. And this is just a really easy way to organize your thoughts, because I know when I write things down, it can sometimes be all over the place. So having this template to keep things all in the places they need to be makes it really easy, not just for you to look at, but for anyone who may need to read through your files later on. All right, so here is that lovely little template. And so now I'm going to quiz you guys after this to see how well you've been listening. Uh-oh, I think they saw the answers. Well, hold please, close your eyes really fast. We will get there. All right, we'll see if anyone was able to read that really quickly. I am not seeing Mel's screen, but I don't know if, there we go. All right. So this next exercise, we have examples of things that may have been written in a DAP note. And I want you guys to tell me if it's data, assessment, or plan. So A, next meeting will be on 10/3, which is today. Homer will complete housing applications. By then, Sam will request docs for properties to prepare for payment of app fees. That was a lot of P's. So is A, data, assessment, or plan? Laura says plan. Anyone else? Sarah says plan, and everybody says plan, and you're right, it's plan. Good job, everybody. All right, how about B, case management meeting with Homer on 9/26. Homer confirmed he received the housing applications I left for him. Homer reports he has a job interview on 10/1. Is this assessment or data? Data. I see a lot of data. Oh, it's actually assessment. Those ones can be similar. I think maybe those flipped around. Melanie.
So the reason that this is assessment is that it's an assessment of how the client is progressing, and he's saying like he received the housing applications, he's got a job interview on this date. It's like status of the goals that he's set essentially.
All right. And then the last one by default is going to be data. Homer's progressing on his case plan applied to Medicaid. So it's just kind of like reporting out what has happened in data. It's just kind of those factual pieces.
And I lied. You're right. The last one was data, and then this one was assessment.
All right. So
Sorry
yeah, PDA.
PDA. Perfect.
Much better,
Sorry.
right? All right. So you guys were right. Good job. You guys know more than we do because you actually do it every day. So those are DAP notes, very common form. This is what I learned when I first started in the field, so I'm sure a lot of you guys use this template. So we will jump into the next type, which I believe Tyler guessed correctly, is a SOAP note. So gold star. Great job, Tyler. So a SOAP note is very, very similar to a DAP. The last two pieces are the same, assessment and plan. It's just that the data piece is split out into subjective and objective. So subjective is kind of what your client is telling you is happening, what's been going on with them, their feelings. And then objective is what you're observing and what you're seeing. So that's where you're going to say like, client seems tired, client seems stressed out, things like that. And then subjective would be Homer came in and said he's really mad at his landlord because blah, 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 things like that. So we also have the downloadable template here. If you want to take a look, I'm going to have you do a sample SOAP note next. And so if you want to use that template to do that, I think that would be a great idea. But I'm going to jump into what we're going to be writing the SOAP note on, and then give you all a couple minutes just to work on that. And Mel dropped the template in the chat, so you all can open that up, download it, and use that just to do some quick notes. And so here is what You're good.
Sorry, Rosie.
You're good.
You want this, not the template. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the template's in the chat if you all want to take a look at it and access that for this exercise. And then the SOAP note, we're going to write one for Homer. And I'll just read it for you guys as you're working, just because I don't like silence. So if you could write a SOAP note for Homer. He came to his scheduled case management meeting on 9/26 in what appears to be an agitated, antsy state. He keeps wringing his hands and pacing back and forth. He shares that he has a job interview on 10/1. He says, I feel so anxious about it because I just want to get out of this place as soon as possible. I'm tired of being broke and not having my own place. It's really stressing me out. You and Homer make a plan to do a mock interview the next day to help him feel more prepared. So if you all could take, I'm going to give you about 2.5 minutes to do your SOAP notes. And here's a reminder in this corner what those different letters stand for. And then we'll come back and I'll ask for folks to share what each part of the note is. All right. I am going to go ahead and get started. Feel free to keep on working if you need to, but we will start with S. So what is subjective? What would you write in that section for your SOAP note? And feel free to just jump off mute or raise your hand.
Homer's stressed about being broke and not having a place to live.
Yep. That is true. That's really good. Anyone else have any thoughts on what else you could add there? Anything else that the client shared that you would want to include in that section?
I would say that he's also acknowledging that he's feeling anxious.
Yep, very good. Wonderful. All right, how about O? So what's the objective part? What is you as a case manager, what are you observing? Anyone? That he's nervous. Yep, about his interview, maybe directly quote him. Yep, that he's anxious. That is good. All right, A, what's the assessment piece? So what's the evaluation of his situation or progress? All right, we'll skip that. I'll show you guys what we wrote in a second. I'm going to skip to P. What's the plan? Job interview. Yep. What else before the interview? Yep, the mock interview. Awesome. So that is the plan. So on the next slide, you guys definitely got it for the most part. It was just this assessment piece, but I think you said everything for subjective, objective, and the plan. So for the assessment piece, is that he has a desire to exit the shelter, and that's contributing to his anxiety and the pressure he feels around getting a job and becoming more financially stable. But otherwise, it seems like you guys got it pretty well. You wrote a nice little note there for Homer. And that is the end of our presentation. Does anyone have questions about SMART goals, case plans, case notes, case management in general, really anything? You can come off mute or drop it in the chat, or you can email any of us later if you would like. And we will share out the slides and the recording.
And if folks want to hang on for a second, I can also drop the link in the chat for where the recordings will be posted. We've posted session 1 already. We're still working to post the slides, but the recording is up on our website. So I'll share that here in a second in the chat in case you're not getting the emails.
And Elise, if you want to share your case note, you are welcome to. Either verbally or in the chat. Thanks for sharing that. Desiree, that is a really great question. And I'm wondering if there's anyone from Urban Peak on the call because they are really going to be the experts in working with that population. All of these tools, I would say, can still be used with that population. Especially SMART goals are probably especially helpful with teenagers. I can also get you connected with folks at Urban Peak if you would like. So that's definitely their specialty. It's a whole different ballgame with those kiddos. Desiree, if you want to put your email in the chat, I'll send out an email for you and get you connected.
Just a reminder, we'll have our third and final session of this series next Thursday. Same time, same place, same link. We'll be diving a little bit deeper into contracts next week, as well as HMIS and data. So with that, if no one else has any other questions, we can end, and thank you so much.